Risk-taking is never easy. You're tossing yourself into the deep end of the pool, hoping you'll be able to swim. It's hard to step outside of your comfort zone. Everyone knows this. Taking a risk is one of the many shared human experiences that universally scares us. Maybe some handle it better than others, but leaving what we know and understand for something in the distance is terrifying. After bringing this prospect up, it may seem like it's better to not take risks. Why subject yourself to something with the potential for failure when you could instead just take it easy and minimize risks? Whether it's an investment, a new job, or a new relationship, why even bother at all? Shouldn't we be getting rid of all risks that we can and make our lives more predictable and less prone to hardship? And, of course, if I'm just trying to get by, how am I supposed to take risks knowing they could very well lead to an even worse situation, especially financially? You can look at it this way, and you'd be right along with much of humanity. Our nature is survival, and taking a risk sets off the red flags in our instincts, suggesting not to embark on anything that may be uncomfortable. Taking risks has always been against our code, yet that's exactly why we should take them in our lives. Getting too comfortable has always been strived for, something that you want to achieve, the ultimate relaxation. Yet, it's just a facade because getting too comfortable can be a downfall and adversely affect you. This is probably a hard prospect to sell to you watching at home. If you're in the section of the population that refutes risk at any chance you get, you're probably confused as to why risk-taking is the route you should take. You need to incorporate some level of risk in your life because choosing not to is an even bigger risk. How is this the case? When you take risks, you're setting yourself up for a better future, even if it has bigger potential blowback. The concept of high risk, high reward applies, and when you take low risk, you have a low reward. Moderating the difference between risks and rewards is the key to a dynamic and exciting life, yet it's not perceived this way. Risk-taking is seen as unnecessary, intimidating, and pointless by many. Socioeconomic statistics indicate that lower-income citizens spend less on investment and riskier ventures out of the necessity of survival. Clearly, when you are rich, you can worry less about the risks of such things. But if you aren't, you should worry more about not taking these risks. Would you be satisfied with staying in that financial hardship, even if it means predictability and stability? This is a false choice, as taking no risks is the biggest risk of all. If you don't actively take them, that doesn't mean you're immune from letdowns and hard times by any stretch. Much like how you can only minimize risks, you can only minimize unexpected bad things happening in your life. Risk-taking will always have likely a negative connotation because it will be associated with gambling, day trading with stocks, or even cryptocurrency volatility. What it won't be associated with as often is moderate risk index fund investing or retirement account savings because the worst of a category will always characterize it. This is where you have power. You have the ability to understand that taking risk is essential and you can share your future with that knowledge. The biggest way to empower someone is to give them knowledge, and that's what we challenge you to do today. We challenge you to examine your life and see where you could take more risks. Whether it's starting a new hobby, investing in a more volatile industry or method, or even cutting off a toxic relationship, the only thing holding you back is your mind and your old notion of risk-taking. Since we've managed to chip away at the latter, your mind is the final barrier, and it's difficult to rewire ourselves, put ourselves in an uncomfortable situation, and explore new things. But, as we mentioned, the bigger issue is not doing these things at all. We are a dynamic species. In the modern era, we've never had to struggle nearly as much as our ancestors, hunt for our food instead of going to the store, or die of an incurable disease. In the 21st century, we've had the ability to take fewer risks, and therefore, lost a part of our humanity. Putting ourselves out there is a major part of our nature, history, and future. In a way, with a better quality of life for the world overall, it's caused complacency in our brains, convinced that we won't have to take risks to better ourselves, and instead, just go with the flow. There's nothing inherently wrong with that way of thinking, as it's true if you live in a well-off position. Risks are easier to take, but also easier to ignore. In a worse situation, however, risk seems harder to take, but in reality, they're just harder to ignore. If you perceive your condition as stability, When you're struggling and barely getting by, or unhappy with yourself, that's nothing but stability in hardship. Simply being predictable doesn't particularly mean that it's in a good way. It just means whatever you're experiencing is constant, and only you can change that. So, what are you waiting for? Go take new risk and better yourself in the process, regardless of the outcome.